T-minus 40 seconds. Everything looks good for launch.
Have you ever fantasized about going somewhere special? Somewhere far from crowds? Off the beaten track? Somewhere out of this world? Is it time to catch a rocket to the red planet?
Mars is filled with mysteries. Volcanoes 75,000 feet tall. Huge canyons 3,000 miles across and 6 miles deep. All kinds of interesting features.
Awaiting you is some of the greatest scenery in our solar system. On a world where water once ruled, then vanished into thin air, where lost microbe empires may still survive underground. We've seen the postcards, and we do wish we were there.
Just the thought of being in this new world, seeing a landscape that no other person had seen before, I think there are a lot of astronauts that would sign up to that.
Go with throttle.
But don't be fooled. Nothing about going to Mars will be easy. Danger awaits you on this desolate beauty, and perhaps Martians too.
If we find on Mars evidence of a second independent origin of life, that's hugely profound because it tells us right away that life is common in the universe.
Mars, invaded by a robot, and perhaps soon by an Earthling like you.
Would I like to go to Mars? Oh, in a heartbeat. Absolutely. If there was any way for me to be going to Mars, I wouldn't be screwing around with robots. You know, I'd want to go myself.
There has never been a better time to boldly go where no human has gone before. To follow in the footsteps of our robot pioneers and visit the planets of the solar system. It's been said that the first person on Mars is alive somewhere on Earth today. Imagine it's you. What do you need to know? How might you get there, and what should you pack? What are some of the must-see sites, and what should you avoid? Think of this as your personal travel guide to exploring the red planet. There are some basic things you should know about Mars before leaving home. Most days will be clear and sunny and cold. The average temperature on Mars is as bitter as midwinter in Antarctica. At about half the diameter of the Earth, Mars is a handy size, but it's much less dense than Earth, with about 1/3 of the gravity. Surprisingly, the actual surface area is almost exactly the same as all the dry land on Earth, shrunk together without the oceans. Build a few freeways and you could drive around Mars in a couple of weeks. And driving around Mars is exactly what planetary scientist Steve Squires has been doing since 2004. Not in person, but via NASA's 2 off-road robot rovers, Spirit and Opportunity.
Stand by. This time we are 5 minutes, 55 seconds after entry.
Looks like nothing I've ever seen before in my life.
For all of us here on Earth, the snapshots sent back by these forward scouts are the next best thing to standing on Mars in a spacesuit.
We very consciously gave these robots some human-like qualities. The cameras are about, this high off the ground. They're the same height as human eyes. It's the visual experience that you get from looking at the rover's pictures is intentionally like what you would get if you were looking at the visor of your helmet and a spacesuit on Mars. I really think that if you put somebody on my team who's been part of this mission for so long down at Eagle Crater or on the summit of Husband Hill, you'd look around and you'd say, yeah, that's about right. That's what I expected.
In the 4 decades since our robots first arrived, the once fuzzy ball at the end of our telescopes has steadily focused into a red planet we can understand. And it's not a welcoming place. The problem is the atmosphere is so thin and cold that water exists only as solid ice in the ground or vapor in the air, not as a liquid on the surface. You might see some fine wispy clouds high in the sky, but don't bother bringing an umbrella. The whole planet is drier than the dustiest desert on Earth. And there hasn't been a drop of rain here for millions, perhaps billions of years.
The thing that fascinated me was that we could see valleys snaking across the surface that had clearly been carved by flowing water. So this is telling us that in the past it was different, and not only that, it was different in a way that would have made it more suitable for life than it is today, and that I found truly compelling.
We are very convinced that at one time it was a very hospitable planet with liquid water and enough atmosphere to sustain a climate. And so now we're trying to understand, how did it change, why did it change, and what still might be on Mars.
These are deep Martian mysteries. If Mars and Earth started as sister planets, did life once festoon the Martian surface? Might it still be there? And where did all the atmosphere and water go? Solving these puzzles has challenged our planetary explorers from the moment the first Martian postcards were sent back to Earth.
It's the fact that it is so much like Earth that kind of makes Mars such a special place.
Steve Squire's Martian Odyssey has taken him from pole to pole, visiting those places on Earth that share at least some of the same characteristics. They are extremely dry, extremely cold, or extremely dead. Death Valley is one of his favorites.
This is actually a really important place. It's a place we call Mars Hill. We first found this place about 20 years ago. In those days, the only successful landings that had taken place on Mars were the 2 Viking landers. And they landed in places that looked very much like this.
In order to plan for the current Mars mission and to test the cameras and other equipment, NASA needed a good Mars lookalike. They found it at Mars Hill.
To your eyes, the main way in which Mars would look different from this scene would be the color. The color of the sky, and the color of the rocks, and the color of the soil. The colors on Mars are painted from a very narrow palette.
The color palette here is based on rust, rich in iron oxides. The rocks and soil and the rusty dust are always blowing around in the freeze-dried atmosphere. You won't see any blue skies in the tourist brochures for Mars. Instead, they're amber. Not only do the dust particles add a rosy blush to the sky, they also scatter sunlight in a way that turns the color of the Martian sky upside down to human eyes. Red by day, and blue at dawn and dusk. This is a sunset as seen by Spirit, a cold blue sun dropping over a distant alien horizon. Looking up into the clear, starry skies from the surface, you would see Mars as 2 tiny moons Phobos, and the smaller Deimos. With all the grace of a space potato and barely 17 miles long, Phobos has been targeted as a potential stepping stone for the first human mission to Mars. A test run before attempting the fuel-hungry and risky trip to the planet below.